Hello and welcome to the Game Design Archive with Edward and Ludwig.
Hello.
Episode 7. Today
Indeed.
we're gonna talk about game length and deep replayability. Over to you, Ludwig.
Yes. So, there seems to be, today, when people talk about video games, a very large focus on today's topic, game length and, well, not exactly the topic, because there's a focus on game length and replayability.
Mm-hmm.
And we're gonna start talking about game length.
Mm-hmm.
So, basically, what I often see is people talking, a lot about, oh yeah, this game is 100 hours long, oh yeah, this game is 300 hours long, that's epic.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And
although there is a certain, I think recently there has been some more discussions, about games being
maybe
too
actually.
long. But yes,
Yeah.
it's still, I think you're correct. It's still like, for example, Baldur's Gate, right?
Yeah.
People really like that, and I mean, it seems pretty cool, but to me, it's still too long, right? So
Yeah. I've heard,
But I
I don't
understand.
know if this is, I don't know where I heard this, but I heard it's like 150 hours of cutscenes or something in that game.
Yeah.
That's insane.
yeah,
Like just cutscenes, not even gameplay.
yeah,
Obviously that's like over all of the playthroughs because there are like branching paths and stuff, but whatever.
yeah.
And so basically, my theory or whatever you want to call it,
Mm-hmm.
is that a lot of people play video games to have their time wasted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Because there's just so much focus on the games being long, right? You can see that, especially with like sort of AAA or like story games, it seems to be like when people talk about game length, it's inherently good to have a longer game.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't agree with that.
Well, yeah, obviously.
Yeah, because, obviously, a game can be too long, and most games are, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Especially when looking at AAA games, like the games aren't that interesting. Like the gameplay isn't that
Yeah.
interesting. And so what ends up happening is that you're just doing the same thing over and over again, and it takes like several hundred hours, and you're just bored halfway through, or like a third through.
yeah.
I think my favorite example of this is, it's not a recent game, but it's The Witcher 3.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, have you played it at all?
Not at all. I played the first one.
Okay, I've played through Witcher 3 once, and that I speedran through that, sort of, not like actually optimized speedrun, but I sort of rushed, and I think I did that in like 70 hours maybe. I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
And like
It's pretty long.
that's pretty long, and the game
Was that
isn't
with
that
the
interesting.
DLC or?
No, without
Okay.
DLC.
Mm.
I probably could have done it
Yeah.
faster, but I did like some optional content. I did the big optional content,
Yeah.
but not everything. And what I'm trying to say is that like The Witcher isn't a very deep and interesting game mechanically, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's very basic. Like the combat isn't very good.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing really like
I mean, I haven't
deep
played
about
it,
it.
so I don't know. But
Trust me, the
Yeah.
combat isn't good. Well, it's not terrible. It's just generic, melee combat.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no point in it. It's 70 hours. It just gets boring.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to point out there that is interesting is that I feel like this is not exclusive to games, because if you look at other like mediums,
Mm-hmm.
it's like a modern phenomenon that they are longer. Like if you think
Yeah.
about like novels, no, not novels, sorry, short novels is what it's called in
Mhm.
English, right?
Short. I don't know the English word.
Yeah.
Short stories.
Yeah, short stories or whatever, and poetry and stuff, right?
Yeah.
If you look back at stuff like that, they were usually very short and very compact, right? They had like a super deep message, the good ones, right? And even today, they usually try to tell you as much as possible in as little time as possible, right?
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of modern stuff like movies and TV series, right?
Yeah.
They go on forever, and I think it's the same thing happening with the games. I think it's just coming to our second point here, which is the value, right? The companies want more money. That's what it's about. So they make things longer because people come back. Because it's not about the art, right? It's about making, making more content really... so people can play more content.
Yeah.
And then people pay more.
Yeah, I think it's less that they want people engaged for longer, I think, and more that people just want their time wasted.
Oh, they definitely want people engaged for longer.
Because
for sure, like that's
but like if you, for example, if you make a game that's 10 hours, or you make a game that's 20 hours, it's more expensive to make the game that's 20 hours long, right? But people are gonna say that game's better. So
yes, but the companies want that as well because. For example, in live service games, right? The longer you stay around, the more they can like get money from you.
That's very true.
They definitely
but
want
I'm thinking
you to stick around for longer.
Yeah.
But
I'm thinking more in the sense of like a single player game like The Witcher.
Yeah, but
I don't think The Witcher has microtransactions.
No, it doesn't. It's very fair. But even then, like there's like psychological stuff going on here where like okay, if you play a 5-hour game. And it's super easy, right? You're less invested. Yeah. But if you play a 100-hour game, people are just more invested in a 100-hour game, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it benefits the company that the game is longer as well, because the players, it's sunk cost, right?
Yeah.
So they even like ignoring the fact, because another point of it is, right, they make them longer because people complain that they're too short because they want value for their money. Yeah. But I think it goes both ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I think looking back at like the early 2010s or whatever, I think it sort of swung the other way, because people still have the same opinion, yes, because back in the early 2010s, it wasn't uncommon for like full price AAA games to be like 2 hours long.
Yeah.
And like, I can definitely understand someone complaining about that. Like, there are 2-hour games that are worth a AAA price tag, in my opinion. But I can definitely understand someone paying like $60 or whatever it cost back then for a game, and then it's only 2 hours and they're disappointed, right?
Well,
but it's...
See, I don't know.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, like, if we move on to the next point here.
Not yet. I'm not done.
Okay.
Because what I wanted to say...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. What I wanted to say is that it's just gone way too far now, because now games are like not several hundred hours long, but like single player games are at least, if we're talking about like single player RPGs, they're at least 50 hours long. And like that's at the upper limit for me personally. How long I can stay invested in a game.
But the thing is, with what you said, 2-hour game is, it's too long in my opinion. So
what game?
Any game that is 2 hours, almost any game. I mean, there are exceptions, but like most game I play these days are not 2 hours long. So
that's true.
So I wouldn't say that's the issue. I would say, like, if I can bring up the point now.
Go ahead.
So the problem, I think, is the difficulty again that we've talked about before. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because what has happened over time is the incentive, right, from the company. So if we go back in time, we have arcade games, right?
Yeah.
Far back. And the incentive for arcade games is to make them hard, right? Because you make money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when console games started to become popular, that sort of stayed, right? Because that's what developers knew how to do, which meant games were pretty hard in the beginning, which meant that they took longer to beat because they were harder. So old games are generally not that long. They are like 2 or 3 hours, right?
Yeah.
Max. But they can take, depending on the person, can take way longer than that to beat, right?
Yeah.
But slowly over time, that has disappeared, right? Maybe because the developers have changed, maybe because people realize that people complain or whatever. But I think this like problem you're talking about, where the games are too short, and the 2010s, I think that's like the breaking point where the developers have tuned down the difficulty so much that the game feels too short to the player that just plays through it once, right? Because they can just go through it in, like you said, 2 hours and never play it again, and then they feel ripped off, right? But
because when I'm talking about those 2-hour games, I'm talking like about, you know, the Call of Duty campaign or something, or games similar to that.
Right, but you could make a version of that that's still that long and interesting and hard or whatever, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But they aren't.
Sure. Yeah.
I think that's a very good point. My favorite example, and you already know what I'm gonna say probably of that, is Super Hexagon by Terry Kavanagh.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to one of the best designers out there.
Yeah.
Super Hexagon is a 6-minute long game. You have 6 levels in the game. Each of them are the goal is to survive for 1 minute.
Yep, per level.
And I've played that game before I finished it. Like the time it took to beat that game, let's check it out, is 10.3 hours here on Steam for a 6-minute game.
I think
that's
played it like 20
that's
hours.
pretty good. Like, there's obviously not a lot of content in Super Hexagon because it's a 6-minute long game.
I mean, you could argue there's way more content.
Yeah, true. But like, if we're talking about actually content that like he has made, or like he hasn't made 30 hours worth of levels that I played through once. He's made 10 hours worth of 6 levels that I played through thousands of times because the game is hard.
Sure, but you could argue that the effort it takes to make that takes longer, right? Even if the game is shorter.
Obviously,
Because these days anyone can, open up Unreal Engine and just make a huge level, which people do, and it's not that fun. So obviously I agree, and like this ties into the fact that another point we want to bring up, which is that short games in general have more replay value for obvious reasons, because if a game is very long, then you won't bother replaying it even if it's good.
Yeah, because it's a slog.
Yeah, right? It's too much effort to go through it again.
Yeah,
like you might think about like, oh, I want to try that section again but this way, or that section again but this way.
Yeah,
you can't do that because, or you can do it, but then you remember that, oh right, I have all these other sections that I need to do. That's and then if it's like a 50-hour game or something, you're like, oh right, that's at like 30 hours and I need to play all. It's
I think going back to my The Witcher 3 example is pretty interesting, because I played that game when that came out, which was like 2016, I think. And I was a little kid back then. And I loved the game, and I was like, wow, this is so epic, and it's several hundred hours long, and I love it. And then like a few years later, I was like, The Witcher 3 was pretty good, let me replay it. And first of all, I realized that The Witcher sucked, and that I was stupid, and that I've learned so much about game design since then. But I also noticed, wow, what the fuck, this game is like hundreds of hours long. I can't be bothered to play this. Like, I played for like 10 hours, and then I was like, yeah, I've already played this once, I'm not gonna do it again. It's a slog. Whereas, if we're looking at the Super Hexagon example, that game is 6 minutes long, and I've played that like 10 hours. And it's if for example I was to like choose between, let's say that let's say in this example that I actually enjoyed The Witcher, right? And I was like, I want to replay The Witcher, or I could choose I enjoy Super Hexagon, and I can choose replaying Super Hexagon. Like, if I had to choose between those two, I would definitely pick Super Hexagon today, because like it's way shorter, and it's hard, and it's way more interesting, and like replaying it is both feasible, but it also gives me something of value other than having my time wasted, right?
Yeah, potentially. If it's still
What do you mean potentially?
Yeah, well, if you have already beaten it, you might not get as much out of it, right? Or you don't get as much out of it. But then again, it's 6 minutes long, so you're not.
Yeah.
It's okay to go back to it.
Yeah.
But I think this this is sort of like a viewpoint thing as well, because I think the way we look at games, if we go back to your original point about wasting time, is a bit different. So for me, sure, I want to spend time playing games, right? But it's not really about time, right? Time is not what you get out of a game. You get something else out of a game, right? And how long that takes, it does matter, right? It's better if it's not too long, basically. But then again, if it's something that, like, it can take a long amount of time. See, this is really hard to explain because, like you said, okay, this game is 6 minutes long, but you spent 10 hours playing it.
Yeah.
And I mean, sure, it wasn't that expensive, so technically that's, even considering other people's definition of value for money, I think like $1 per hour or whatever, right? That you still meet that, even though you didn't play it for hundreds of hours, right? Because it's like €3 or something, right?
Yeah.
Or dollars. But even if we don't consider that, the like what you get out of that game or games like that is not hours, right?
Yeah.
It's something else. So it sort of clashes with the viewpoint of these longer games, right? Because I feel like a lot of them are not really designed to be interesting, even, if that makes sense. They're sort of...
Yeah, I mean, The Witcher is a pretty good example of that, in my opinion.
But if we're gonna talk about replay value, right? A good thing to bring up is scoring systems, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, rhythm games, right? Rhythm games would not be that interesting without scoring systems, I think.
Yeah.
Because you would beat whatever you're playing, like the song, right? You're playing in whatever game, right? And you there wouldn't be anything there, right? So if you have scoring system, you get more depth and more replay value because you can add, like, there's nuances to the mechanics that you have, like the game is forcing you, in quotation marks, to explore because you that you didn't need to in quotation marks beat that level, right? And it's the same for like arcade games, right? You beating them is usually one thing, right? But scoring is on top of that, and then that like adds a layer of difficulty as well, right? So there's more depth to that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because like, you know, going back to the Super Hexagon example, you know, once I've beaten that game, the game doesn't stop after 1 minute, right? The levels keep going for as long as you can survive.
You can keep going.
It's just that like after 1 minute, the game says you've done it. Go on to the next level, and you know, that's kind of why I was talking about, like, if I wanted to go back to Super Hexagon, that would still be fun because I could master it and say, well, now my goal is 2 minutes for every level.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that is true actually.
And so there's like inherent value in that in some way.
Yeah. I don't think that game scales very well, right? It's just endless.
No.
But in theory, it could be.
Yeah.
It could be like it gets harder, and you need to learn even more intricate details about how the hexagon spins or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's true. Like in that game, it's mostly about like just doing the same thing for longer, which is still hard because it's a hard game. But yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah, and it's really hard, like, to explain this. I feel like I haven't really gotten it across exactly. But maybe if we keep, like, you had another point about some other games, so.
Oh yeah. Okay. So now I'm going to bring up my one of my favorite games, or like game series or franchises or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the Shadow Tactics slash Desperado slash Shadow Gambit franchise.
Yep.
They all have different names. By Mimimi Games. And so they are real-time tactics stealth games-ish. Based on Desperados and Commandos, if anyone has heard of them before.
I have.
And the first one was Shadow Tactics. And Shadow Tactics is one of my favorite games ever. It's really fun. It's pretty hard. I'm actually not going to go into that yet, because that's a later point. But it's sort of puzzly in a way. So it's more like, it's not an action game where it's like, you know, oh, execution ability, I need to aim good or something. It's like, I use my brain. But I'll move on to that, or I'll talk about that later. But the point I want to make is that the last game that Mimimi Games made before they shut down was called Shadow Gambit.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a very big difference between these two games, because Shadow Tactics is extremely like linear. It's very limited, and it's very like focused and like predeterminedly designed or whatever. So I'll take an example here. There, in those games, there are a few characters that you can choose between, or that exist in the game. And in Shadow Tactics, those characters are selected like at the start of the level. So depending on I think there are like 5 or 6 characters, and in some levels you'll have only 2 of those characters, and in some level you will have all of them, and in some levels you will not have one person, and it's all like predetermined by the level.
Mm-hmm.
So like, oh, in this level I only have the ninja and the samurai because it's based in Japan, and then in another level I'll only have the samurai and the hot girl that can distract the guards and stuff like that.
Yep.
Very long explanation, but I promise I'm gonna get to the point soon. Shadow Gambit does something different. The developers, in the name of replayability and player freedom and stuff that we've talked about before, decided that you as the player should get to decide which character you bring to which missions.
Yep.
And as I said, this is mostly for like, oh yeah, replayability, or like you can choose what you want, blah blah blah. And Shadow Gambit is so much worse than Shadow Tactics. It's such an interesting example, because what ends up happening is that the game becomes less interesting, essentially. So they've essentially made the game worse in the name of replayability, and that's sort of the point that I want to get to. Because allowing me to choose my characters means that I'm just going to choose the characters that are OP, or my favorites or whatever, which means I'm going to play with all of the same characters all the time, which means that the game is boring. Whereas in Shadow Tactics, I had the level predetermined, or the developers determined which characters I was going to use for that level. And if I didn't have my favorite character, I would have to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the argument here is that, well, if you can choose whatever character you want, you can play the level several times. And they have a bunch of mechanics for like grinding levels to get a bunch of lockups and stuff, or unlockable things. And I feel like I'm ranting a bit here, but basically what I'm trying to say is that, as I said before, replayability shouldn't come at the cost of good gameplay, because what ends up happening is that the game becomes less replayable. If you forced me to choose between replaying Shadow Gambit or replaying Shadow Tactics, I would choose Shadow Tactics every day of the week, even though technically it has been designed to be less replayable. It has, in fact, been designed to be almost not replayable at all. Whereas Shadow Gambit has a lot of focus on replayability.
I feel like that's that makes sense though, because if we go back to an older episode, we talked about limitations, right? This is sort of a limitation thing, and
it's very, very topical.
And so what counterintuitively happens in this case is the limitations actually creates more replay value, and you see that
Exactly.
in the like the other examples we brought up, like old arcade games or like shorter games and level-based games that are less like that are 2 hours long. A lot of these games have this in common, where it's like they're very focused, and I feel like focused games have a lot of replay value because ironically, if you have a very limited amount of options, it's actually more interesting to explore the options than if you have a lot of options.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I guess, as you said, it's sort of very related to player freedom as well. But I think, like, even if we're not just looking at that example, I think I mentioned that, like,
I mean, it does create replay value, so I'm not saying it's not.
Yeah, but like Shadow Gambit also has a bunch of mechanics that makes you replay missions, or like that's supposed to incentivize you to replay missions.
Yeah.
And it's like, I played Shadow Gambit once and I never want to play it again. It was a fine game, but it wasn't very good. Shadow Tactics I have replayed more than once, and you know, if you asked me in 5 years, hey, do you want to replay Shadow Tactics, I'd be like, yeah, it's pretty fun, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Even though it's a less replayable game in quotation marks.
Yeah. I think it also probably, I mean, I haven't played those, I've only played Desperados, so I don't know, but I feel like Shadow Tactics is a better game as well, which, you know, also adds to the replay value.
Yeah, and that's sort of the point I was trying to make, that like mechanically Shadow Gambit and Shadow Tactics are very similar games. It's that the focus on replayability has made Shadow Gambit a worse game than Shadow Tactics.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a mistake that a lot of people do. And maybe we can move on to the second example I have here, because I have two examples I want to rant about. And that's, well, it's randomized content and roguelikes in general. Because there's obviously a very big roguelike trend in gaming.
Or roguelite.
Roguelite, yeah, sorry, I always confuse them. And one example of a roguelite that I sort of like and sort of hate at the same time is a game called Wildermyth. And that's a tactical RPG that has pretty interesting combat. But no one talks about the combat. What everyone talks about is the like generated story system that they have in that game.
Yep.
And I'm once again gonna go and explain mechanics for a really long time, but I promise I'm gonna get to the point. The way that works is that there's like a very big pool of events that can happen, and then there's like a pool of main story events. So there's like a pool of side events and main events, and whichever ones you get, it's like sort of random. It's sort of some things are predetermined, and people always, when people talk about that game, it makes me so annoyed, because I think it's a good game. But when people talk about that game, the only thing they talk about is the story generation thing. And the story generation thing sucks, in my opinion.
Okay.
Like, if I could remove that from the game, that game would go from like a 7 out of 10 to a 9 out of 10. It's actually atrocious. And the reason for that, which is why I want to bring that up as an example, is that I feel like randomized content, I think I've mentioned this in a previous episode, I'm not sure, but randomized content has a tendency to not really matter.
Yeah.
I think it was last episode, I'm not sure, I mentioned that about like levels, where it's like, if you have a level that's randomized, what ends up happening is that it doesn't really matter what the level is.
Yeah, the level is just
because
there.
the game has been designed in a way where it doesn't matter to make the randomization possible, right? And I feel like that has happened with that game too, with that story system. It's that people say that the story system is good because it's randomized and it's a new story every time, in quotation marks. But what actually ends up happening is that the story is super uninteresting and it doesn't matter. And the only reason I played that game is for the combat.
Yeah. I mean, this is sort of a thing in general with roguelites, I feel like.
Yeah.
They but a lot of people do argue that they have a lot of replay value. But yeah, I don't know. I think for me, at least, roguelikes, some of them do have a lot of replay value, but I would say it's not because of the perceived replay value, as in the things that people talk about as replay value. Those are not that interesting. So, because randomization, there is like, I mean, we already talked about RNG, right, before.
Yeah.
So I don't want to go into too much details here about that, but when you can randomize things, so like you said, you randomize the story or the levels or whatever, and that creates variety, but that variety, like you said, is not that deep because you play around that depth, right?
Yeah.
But you could also use it, like we talked about before, where you make the system unpredictable. So it's technically not variety. It's the same thing, but it's like small variety. But basically the result is the game is hard, right? We talked about Ghosts and Goblins, for example, right? Where it's like, it's very undeterministic. It's like, can I jump here or can I not jump here? And you need to think, right? Yeah. And that creates, I do think that does create depth as well, right? Yeah. So it's not like black and white with this stuff, I guess, with the randomized stuff. Yeah. But I guess randomized content maybe, because it's still more interesting that you know what's coming up next, I think.
Yeah. I think that when talking about replayability, there's a lot of focus on like surface level stuff. Like, for example, the randomized story in Wildermyth, or slightly randomized room layouts in something like Hades.
Yeah.
It's like, it doesn't really matter. It's just like superficial variety, that's it. And there's like nothing actually deep about it.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to what we said in the beginning about like hard games, because I think how you and I look at replay value is more of sort of like a mastery thing, right? Where it's like you want to learn what this game has to teach you, and you don't really care how long or how short it takes. You just don't want your time wasted, basically. So you want it to be dense, right? The game should be content dense, so you're not bored, and it should like teach you, in quotation marks, something new all the time.
Yeah.
So that you, like, in quotation marks, grow as a person or whatever you wanna, however you wanna look at it, right? And I think there is where the clash comes in, because the roguelike content idea is more of the, like, your original thesis about how they want their time wasted. So it's not about learning how this game works. It's sort of like just more content.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I agree with that. That's not interesting.
Yeah. I think there's one sort of thing that about modern roguelites that like annoys me a lot. And you're gonna have to help me remember the name of this game. What's the name of the card game that the one with the really ugly graphics?
Well, now I don't want to say it.
Dream Quest.
Oh, Dream Quest. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I thought you were thinking of Slay the Spire.
No, but that's actually very topical, because I'm gonna talk about both of them.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So, roguelike card games are a very popular genre. They've been that for a very long time. And one thing that I've noticed, because I've played a few roguelikes, and one thing I've noticed is that if you look at, roguelites, I need to use the right terminology. If you look at old school roguelites, which kind of sounds way older than it is, because like roguelites are pretty new. I'm thinking about like 2010s and onwards. If you look at something like Spelunky or Dream Quest, as I said, or any of those older roguelites, they are pretty goddamn hard.
Yes.
And it's like, beating that game once takes a long time. Like, I've played Dream Quest for 15 hours, and I haven't even completed it yet. Like, I've played it on and off, like, for a few hours every few months or something. And it's like, I've been close to beating it a few times, but like, no, I haven't beaten it, and it's super hard. And you know, the same with Spelunky. I haven't played Spelunky that much, but I've heard that it's very hard, and I believe
it's very hard.
But if you look at modern roguelites, I said the right thing this time, they are sort of easy. It's like completing a run is like, it's not the end goal, it's like the first step. And I think that's very interesting when you compare old and new roguelites.
And the end goal is to beat it.
Yeah, exactly. In old roguelites, the goal was to beat the game, because beating the game was hard. And so I actually enjoy old roguelites, even though I'm not really a big fan of roguelites. Yeah. I feel like I'm saying roguelites all the time. Yeah. Whereas new roguelites, I absolutely hate, because, you know, I'll take an example of a roguelite that isn't like super bad. I don't think it's a bad game necessarily, but it's the most recent roguelite that I've played. And that's Balatro. Mm-hmm. And I came to the final boss in my first run in Balatro. And I've only played one run of Balatro. And, you know, if you compare that to something like Dream Quest, which is also a roguelite card game, although they are very different, I don't even think I lasted like 2 or 3 combats in that game before I died. Yeah. And it's very interesting to see how like roguelites have become easier over time. Because the reason why like people play roguelites, I guess, or why they say they like them, is because it's like, oh yeah, I can keep playing it and it's permadeath, and you know, I'm fighting over and over again until I finally reach the end. But now they're making roguelites where you reach the end on the first or second try, and it's like, okay, why am I playing them then? I just end up quitting after I've beat it. And I'm not supposed to quit, because there's a bunch of like meta progression and content afterwards and secret endings and whatever, but I don't care, because I've beaten the game. I don't want to play it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I
don't know.
I probably, like, I don't play modern roguelites either, because well, I don't like roguelites at all, actually.
Yeah.
I just, because of what we mentioned before, what the randomization does is just make parts of the experience not matter. Yeah. But there are good ones, and I think I agree with you that most of those are old ones, like Spelunky, for example. But yeah, in general, I would say, for me, games that are sort of similar to roguelikes, you know, run-based and short and whatever, but are actually not roguelikes, are way more interesting, because
absolutely.
I don't know, the challenges presented are more clear, I guess.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you. I like the idea of a run-based game. The problem is that most run-based games that are released are like modern roguelites.
Yeah. But I think this is a problem, because I think people sort of expect that. So if we to tie this back to the topic, right?
Yeah.
Of replayability. Mm-hmm. What I think a lot of people see in this is, at least in theory, that it's more replayable if it's randomized. Yeah. I guess we have already touched on that, because we talked about the fact that they just want to see more. So if the game is easy, right? Yeah, that is true.
Well, I think I sort of I had a long rant about Dream Quest and stuff, but I didn't really tie it together. So thank you for helping me realize that I perhaps didn't make it very clear. So the thing about the older roguelikes is that I feel like a lot of times the randomization is a lot more meaningful. So, for example, in Dream Quest, there are like, I think it's like, it's you do three levels, and you know, there's a boss in every level, and there's like a random order, and there's like different biomes, but every biome has the same bosses and stuff like that. And so what ends up happening is like, I'm in the sand biome. I'm gonna meet a bunch of tigers, I think, is in the sand biome. I don't remember. And so I need to make a deck that counters tigers and stuff like that. And that's interesting, I think.
Yeah.
That sort of randomization is interesting. But what ends up happening in modern roguelikes is that it's just like, oh yeah, now I'm in the sand area, but the only thing that's different is that it looks sort of different, and that there's like
Yeah, I guess maybe
one or
they
two
are
more
trying to send
mechanics.
off the randomness as well. I
Yeah.
haven't thought about that actually.
And so it's kind of that difference between like deep randomness or superficial randomness. I feel like a lot of games rely on superficial randomness to increase replay value because things look different, but in reality they really aren't. Whereas, you know, randomness is fine, but it needs to be deep. Like, it needs to change how you play the game.
Yeah. I think this ties back to the chaos thing though. Like, if the randomness is chaotic, like in Ghosts and Goblins, that I mean, on a surface level, if you look at Ghosts and Goblins, that doesn't look like that. That looks like, okay, you go from A to B, and that's like the game, right? But the chaotic nature of the randomness makes it interesting, and I think that's sort of what you're saying that you can do in a roguelite as well, where you can have, you sort of have to think more about what you do because of the randomness. It's not just changing the environment or whatever.
Exactly. Like, you need to change how you play the game. And in most roguelikes or lights, the only thing that changes is like what the level looks like, or there's a slight variation in the setup of enemies, but it's not really a big, it doesn't really matter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's if we move away from randomness for a bit here and move back to the topic, what I guess we could bring up some games that don't necessarily have replay value and are still good, right? Do we want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, most puzzle games fit into this category. I could take anyone. Let's take Steven Sausage Roll, because I really love that one. It's one of my favorite puzzle games. That game...
although, sorry to interrupt you, I feel like, in my opinion, a lot of puzzle games do suffer from being a bit too long. But maybe that's just me.
Yeah, do you have an example?
I don't know, Steven Sausage Roll.
No, it's fine.
Isn't that like 30 or 40 hours?
I think I did it in like 25.
Okay, yeah. So I don't know.
But
I think that you could
it's on
cut
the longer
out
end,
some
definitely.
stuff there, probably.
You
feel like
definitely could.
They go for a bit. But I think they do need it a bit as well, because, go ahead.
Yeah. We're...
they don't have replay value. Is what we're saying.
Exactly, that was the point. So puzzle games, obviously, they have a solution if they're well designed generally.
Or multiple or whatever.
Multiple similar ones, I guess, whatever. And so what ends up happening is that puzzle games basically have no replay value, right? It's because if I know how to solve the puzzle, it's not hard anymore because I know the solution, and there's no like execution thing that I need to worry about. And yet, here's the point: puzzle games are still good. Right. Puzzle games are beloved by many people. Many people play puzzle games. Many people enjoy puzzle games. And nobody complains about a puzzle game where they're like, oh, this has no replayability.
No, but they do complain about them being short. I have seen that.
Yeah, that's true. But people complain about all games being short.
Or was it the game there where you placed people and... I don't remember what it was called.
Placed people?
Yeah, you had you could place...
Storyteller. Yeah, that's a very good point, actually. Yeah, that game was less than 2 hours long. I think it was even perhaps 1 hour long. But they added content afterwards to make it longer. I think too many people refound it. But that's also a very good example. Like, that's a pretty good game. And I mean, now I think the opinion of that's pretty good. Like, it didn't have a very good release, but I think afterwards it kind of picked up.
I mean, I think people liked it when it came out as well. It was just, vocal people about value and...
Yeah, but I think it sold, it didn't sell too well in the beginning, but then it did. I think I've heard the developer said something about that. But obviously, puzzle games are good, and I do think, however, with puzzle games, I've even seen some puzzle games that sort of go in the direction of like, oh yeah, this is a randomized puzzle game with replay value or something.
Yeah, I don't like that.
I don't think I've played anyone that's good.
Well,
I'm trying to
puzzle games. I'm. Well, you think I'm gonna explain why how I feel about that?
Yeah.
Puzzle games are sort of like the most like there is no, you can't have chaos in a puzzle game, right? So like we talked about for you, there is no like you said, there is no execution element. There is a solution.
Mm-hmm.
So if you add chaos, that just makes what is interesting about this puzzle less interesting.
Yeah.
Because the entire thing about a puzzle is that a person has designed an interesting puzzle. Yeah. So random, like it's not about understanding that you can move this block and you can move this block, like you can move that block in that way and that block in that way, and then you can just shuffle that around and make interesting interactions. That's not what a puzzle game is. A puzzle game is, oh, you have this block and then this other block, right? And then the designer realizes, if this block is like on top of that block, then this really interesting thing happens. And you can't randomize that, right? That's not how it works. Whereas if you have like an action game or whatever, like I mentioned earlier, again, Ghosts and Goblins, bringing it up again, it creates, actually, it does the opposite, right? Because it's sort of a system of objects doing their own thing, and then by adding in chaos, you get a bunch of like permutations of what could happen, and that's it. I guess you could argue that they are similar, but it's not. It is,
yeah.
They are different.
I would say that
they are different, but it's hard to explain why they are different.
Yeah, I would say that looking back at what I said about randomized levels not really mattering.
Yeah.
I think that puzzle games are like the genre of game where the individual like design of the levels matters the most.
Yes, I agree.
It's like having a very well designed level. Like you could have a really interesting puzzle game with like really interesting systems and everything. If the levels suck, the game sucks. Whereas you could have a puzzle game that's really simple and like not really interesting mechanically, but with good level, it's a good puzzle game. And I think puzzle games are sort of unique in that, and that's the reason why randomization doesn't work for them.
I guess they don't have they don't have mechanics is the wrong thing to say, but they don't have like interaction. How should I say this? Like if you have you have a RPG or something, right? Yeah. The enemy has a bunch of spells and you have a bunch of spells, and then their spells can combine in different ways that do things, right? So you don't even need a level sometimes to make it interesting.
Like the game is interesting anyways.
Yeah, exactly. But whereas in a puzzle game, it's sort of...
The level is the interesting part.
Yeah. I don't know if the level is the right way to say it, because you could have action games where levels matter as well.
Yeah.
But like it's sort of like how the mechanics, like it wouldn't be having two mechanics presented in front of you from a puzzle game doesn't make, like nothing happens, right? It's just two mechanics. Whereas in some other genres, since they're, well, if they're enemies or whatever, it creates, like if you have 5 different enemy types, right? You're gonna get different scenarios by just... I mean, you do get different scenarios from a puzzle game if you do that as well, but I think puzzle games have to explore deeper or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
To be interesting, because
there's like no execution element. Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah, and so I guess sort of to tie together to the topic we're talking about, like puzzle games don't really have replayability, and those that do, the randomized puzzle whatever games, are usually not very good. Like you could argue that, oh well, Minesweeper has been played for billions and trillions of hours by grandmas all over the world, but it's like...
Also, that I would argue that Minesweeper is like action puzzle. I mean, it's not action, but it's tied to like this... Yeah, that's actually kind of funny. So I have... This is very... I haven't thought about this before. This is really interesting, actually. So you can actually randomize puzzle games, I just realized.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is a perfect example of it. But it's not the thing we're thinking about, because that's more action puzzle, right? Which is, it's sort of a different genre, in my opinion. Like, it's really hard to explain why action puzzle is different from puzzle, but it is. Puzzle is sort of like, I don't know, a puzzle game has more in common with like a crossword, in my opinion, whereas a action puzzle game is more like a game, right? So it's like, so the example is Tetris. Tetris is a perfect example because it's a very simple puzzle game, and the only thing that's interesting about that is the permutations, right? That is created from the randomness.
True. Yeah.
So, but then again, Tetris has execution, right?
Yeah.
So, well, it was just an interesting point to bring up, I guess. That counters that.
And I guess another thing about Tetris, I guess it's considered a pretty replayable game.
For sure.
And Tetris is a high score game, right?
Yeah.
So it's once again going back to the true deep replayability. Like if you have a scoring system or a high score system or whatever, that game is infinitely replayable in theory, right? Because you can always get a higher score. Yeah. Do you have anything else you want to say about puzzle games, or do we want to go move on to the secret second to last point?
Yeah, sure. We can move on.
Yeah. So there's one type of game, because this episode so far has been very, very focused on single player games.
Yeah.
But I wanted to talk a bit about multiplayer games, and especially competitive multiplayer games, because they are sort of, if they're good, asterisk, infinitely replayable in a way. Like, I play a lot of Counter-Strike. I always talk about Counter-Strike in these episodes.
Yep.
I played that game for almost 1,000 hours, and I'm probably gonna play it for at least a few hundred hours more before I die.
Well, you never know.
And that game, I could be hit by a bus tomorrow. That's true. But that game is like, in the competitive game mode, I guess, you have like 7 levels or 7 maps, and you have like a few guns, and it's the same guns that have been in the game since like 1853, and it's like nothing about that game is changed, and it never grows old, right? Yeah. And I guess this is the sort of point I want to make about this is that in a multiplayer game, I think we mentioned this before in another episode, you're against another person, right? And so there's this constant like arms race of knowledge, I guess, where it's like, okay, if I learn a new cool trick, my opponent is gonna learn that I learned the new trick, and he has to do something to counter that trick. And so there's a constant back and forth between the players. And one thing that I think is really interesting about Counter-Strike, especially because it's so old, is that if you look at like really, really old competitive matches from like when the game was launched in 2014 or whatever, the pro players aren't that good.
Sure. Yep.
Like if you put a pro player from that time, like as they played at that time, because a lot of those pro players are still pro players and have become better at the game. But if you put a 2014 Olofmeister or whatever against like a pretty good player, random player in CS, like he might struggle. And I think that's really interesting because it shows how much the like meta develops, not from how the game changes, but just from how like players learn to play against each other, I guess.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, another super great example is like StarCraft, right? That's like the old one, the first one, Brood War or whatever, right?
Yeah.
That's just they haven't done anything to that, and it's sort of the same thing, right? People are just way better these days than they were back in the day. I think that's a big issue with a lot of modern like competitive games, that they're sort of moving away from that, where they're trying to do this weird balancing things, right?
Yeah, they constantly like, oh yeah, this is OP, whatever, change it. And it's like, no, don't do that. Let the meta develop. Like, obviously, if there's something that's completely broken...
I mean, I don't know. Even in that case, a lot of the time, if you look at some older stuff...
it could be too much. Like
you can't tell immediately, though. I think it's not...
That's true. That's
people
true.
can say whatever they want, but it's a lot
Yeah.
of the time it's like, sure, that's broken, but there's an even more broken thing. So
Yeah.
you know,
And you know the meta develops, I guess. So like, if something is broken, then the meta develops to counter that more.
yeah. But,
So it's like
no, I was gonna say something like depressing about your point here, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, competitive games. I agree with you. Competitive games are a very deep, like, and replayable experience, and I think that, like, realizing that when you said that, that's one of the reasons why I don't play competitive games anymore, because modern competitive games are not about that at all. They're about like meta progression and battle passes and rank and all of this like surface level garbage, in my opinion. And that completely destroys the experience for me. Like, I don't even remember what games it was, but it was like, there's like daily challenges, right? And I'm playing with some friend, and they're like doing something super stupid. I'm like, what are you doing? And they're like doing their daily challenge or something, and I'm like, okay, whatever. Like, they don't even want to win the game. They're just focused on their stupid challenge. It's so it's sort of like a fake way to create again with I think the like one of the lessons from today is basically that game designers are scared to make people quit the game, so they're making them easy of all kinds, and to counteract the fact that they're not deep anymore, they're adding a bunch of stuff to make them longer or whatever, or have more content. Which, if you are on the side of where you're interested in the deep, short, like the not like the deep stuff, right? Where the content doesn't have to be long; it just have to be interesting. You get bored because the content is not fun.
Yeah. I think that's a good moral of the story. Make short games that are deep. They become long inherently, and they become replayable inherently. And
obviously it's a different from genre. I would say like strategic games can be longer than action games or whatever, right? So it depends. Or absolutely. Like a puzzle game, right? So it depends, but
I do want to add one final thing, and that's that I mentioned it a bit about the game length in the beginning, I think, but not in the sense of replayability, and that's that people tend to see length and replayability as inherently good, and I just want to clarify that I don't agree with that, because we've been saying, if you make the game hard and good, then it's gonna become long and replayable. That sounds almost like a dirty metaphor, but like, even if your game isn't long and replayable, it can still be good. It's something I want to make very clear.
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, we did bring up the example of puzzle games, so I guess we touched on that a little bit. Yeah, I guess, do you have anything more you want to say?
No, that's basically it. The like, don't focus on value for money. Length and replay value doesn't really matter. The experience is what matters.
Exactly. Thank you for listening, everyone.
Like and subscribe.
See you next week.
Yep.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.